Hi everyone. So I thought to just rather record the video before I get home because things are unpredictable once one is at home. So what happened is that I had an appointment, an after work appointment, and I still had some time to kill before my doctor's appointment. And so I decided to go to an exclusive books and just check out some books and wait. So I get there, I take out a few books from the shelves, and I decide to sit down and have coffee. And I'm quite keen to look through these books and see if I want to buy anything. And I was looking forward to just some quiet alone time. So I sit down, and then this gentleman comes and he sits next to me. And now I have taken down my mask to have my coffee. So then I look at him and I'm like, well, do you mind? And he's like, no, it's fine, because he's sitting probably like 1.5 meters away from me. So then he says, oh, are you studying? And I say to him, no, I am not studying. And he says, why not? And I say, well, because I've been studying. I am done studying. I've just written an exam this very year. So he's like, oh, okay, what were you studying? And then I tell him, he's like, oh, you're a doctor. I was wearing my scrubs. I'm like, yes. And so he asked me what I was studying, and I explained to him what I was doing this year. And so he's like interested, he's curious, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be a conversation now, I guess. A bit disappointed that I am not going to be perusing through my books, but at the same time, I'm just like, you know what, you never know why people want to just start conversing with you. So he starts telling me why he thinks it's good to study, and he says to me, I think you should encourage other young black girls to study, right? So I say to him, yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what I do, but I wouldn't necessarily encourage them to study medicine. So he says, why not? And I'm like, no, I don't have anything against my profession, but I personally think that it's something that you need to be strongly compelled towards, or it needs to be a calling, or it needs to be like the one thing that you definitely want to do, because it can become difficult. It's not necessarily a fun course to do or a fun job to do. So he says, yeah, but I mean, there are other more difficult degrees. There's engineering. And I'm like, yeah, no, actuarial science. There are many other more difficult courses you can study at tertiary. But why I think that one needs to be clear about whether or not they want to become a doctor is that it's more of a lifestyle choice. It affects your whole life. So you need to know that it's not necessarily going to be glamorous. I have met now quite a few interns who are saying that it's not what they thought it was going to be. It's stressful. Some people are depressed. So I feel that it's harder even to go through this when you're not sure that it's definitely what you wanted to do. If you were doing it because your parents forced you into it or some other social pressures, then it's more likely that at some point you will not cope with the difficult patches. But that being said, I love my job. I am fulfilled. I am happy, and I wouldn't trade it for anything, even though it's not easy and it has its days. So a little bit of background. So he tells me like who he is and why he feels it's so important to encourage people to get educated. So he says to me, I'm going to not mention who he is. He asked me not to say what his name is, because some of his views maybe some will view as controversial. So he says, no, by profession he's an advocate, and he's worked as a judge in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, and in Botswana. He used to represent some of the ANC members or struggle stalwarts back in the day, but he was never a card holding member. But because he was so involved, at some point he actually had his passport or ID taken away from him for about 2 to 3 years. So he suffered some consequences for the work that he did, but he at the time felt very strongly about what he was doing. And then we went on to speak about the state of the country as it is now, and his major concern is the level of corruption And we agreed that, apart from COVID, that's probably the one major crisis. So yeah, so he was just giving me context, about life back in those days and how we got to where we are now, and what he sees now as being a major problem for us going forward, in terms of who's going to get us out of this mess. Are people maybe needing to join politics, or are they going to fight this through civil structures? What are the things that we are going to do as the people who are going to be still here many years from now? Because he does not have many years left to live. I mean, if I had to guess, I'd say he's probably in his 80s. So he said to me he strongly believes in education. So his message to young people is that you need to be educated. And he said, one of the sly things that he said, or stroke funny, which he actually asked me not to repeat, but I think I can because I am not going to mention his name, was who's actually running the country. If you look who has the bulk of the majority of the wealth in the country. And he, without saying much, I'll just say that he alluded to the owners of the mall that we were in at the time. And it's one of the malls here near Park Lane. And he was just saying that those people own a lot of property and have a big chunk of our economy. And so he went on to speak as to why is it that those particular people who are a minority in our country are so successful. Why is it that they are achieving the things that they are achieving? And he thinks that it's partly because of how they groom their children from a young age. And he was saying that these people, many of them have libraries in their houses. Their children are taught how to read from a young age. And if education is so important that they actually look out for if children are having difficulties with studies from a young age, and they actually do something about it, things like occupational therapists, etc. He said they have a tight network of ways to intervene when children are having difficulties at school, because it is that important to them for them to be educated, but not only educated, but highly educated. So as in at every level of education, whether it's primary, secondary, or tertiary, they need to get excellent grades. And if you consider for those who went to multiracial schools, if you went to schools with some of these people, you usually find that they were the top students in your classes. When they do something, they generally, you find, do it to the max. And not to take anything away from things like genetic potential and other advantages such as financial, right? But definitely the one thing that is indoctrinated in these people is the spirit of hard work and discipline. And so when he looks at us, and maybe he's looking at us, black people or young black people, someone might say it's a judgmental perspective, but it's just his opinion, and he's saying that it's just his opinion, but he's concerned that maybe not enough of us have the spirit of fighting, of fighting for success, fighting to be excellent, essentially. And so he just encouraged me to tell my fellow people, black people, that we have a lot to lose. There's still a lot to be done, and we need to pull up our socks and we need to work. And he then said he would jot down a few what he thinks are key messages, certainly things that he feels have led him to success. And he still says he is still on a journey, so he is still learning, about how to be the best that he can be, or how to even impart, how can we pass on this baton, him as an elderly person. So he jotted these things down for me. I was now about to be late for my appointment, so I say, please, can you just jot down what is it that you want me to tell people? And he gave me 16 points. And he said he would highly appreciate it if I spread this, but without mentioning his name. So point number 1, he said, aim high. He said, be significant, be ambitious, make plans and write them down. He said to set goals and to also write those down with time frames. And then he said, whatever you think you can become, you actually can become. And he said, he wrote, good thoughts equals roses, bad thoughts equal thorns. And he said, you need to actively fight bad thoughts. You need to actively fill your mind with good and positive thoughts. He did say that some of these things are from books that he's read and quotes that he's learned. So he's not claiming to own this knowledge, and if you're reading books like The Power of Positive Thinking and such, you've maybe heard some of these messages. And then he said we need to change our mindset. We need to not have a mindset of necessarily entitlement, but a mindset of wanting to achieve. He said we need to become optimistic. And he did say that he stole this one from Obama, which is yes, you can. Number 10 is be honest. Number 11 is don't harm people. Number 12 was no drugs, no booze, no womanizing. Number 13 was you have nothing to lose. And 14 was don't be afraid. And 15 was go for it. And then he added his own 16, which I think is also another quote that he's living by. And he said, you have the strength and the passion and the patience within you to reach for the stars and to change the world. So I just thought that I should share this because he asked me to, but because also like what a random conversation on a Friday afternoon. Filled with so many motivational pearls. And for me, it's just another reminder that even though I don't necessarily know if I have the gift of motivating, but what I'm realizing is that I clearly can't run away from the fact that there are people who look to us, some of us who've achieved certain things, to shed some light on how we can achieve or how we can try. So for me, it was just also another reminder that we have to shine our light. And even though I don't know that I have this gift to motivate, but it's clearly something that I am now suspecting that God actually wants me to do. I'm not sure in which capacity, but what I definitely want to do is to listen when I'm being told. And so this is the message that I have been told to share with everyone today, but particularly young Black people. If you want to know more or you want some specifics or a bit of the other background information on this conversation, hit me up. Most of you will have my contacts. But yeah, guys, that's the story. That's what happened this Friday afternoon. Just some pearls of wisdom from an elderly Muslim man that he wanted me to share with young Black people. Have a good weekend.